Hey friends, tonight I'm going to tell you a true crime story. Gently, you settle in, the room dim and cool, the soft breeze of your fan lifting the edge of the blanket. Outside your window, the world is a hush of sodium streetlights and leaf shadows, the kind of quiet that makes even a distant dog bark feel like a secret. In your mind, you're already walking through a small American town where everyone knows everyone, and nothing bad ever happens until it does. So before you get cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. I love mapping our little constellation of late-night listeners. Baiju, haitat den, batkvat de kotin on, ne en, nang, vakung. Ne an batdo, han tring, kodem ne. You step onto Main Street in late autumn, the kind of evening when the neon sign over the diner flickers like a tired blink. The air smells like coffee and rain on pavement. You move past the barber shop with its old striped pole and a window dressed with faded team photos, toward the Riverwalk where the lampposts lean as if they've been listening for years. In a town like this, the past isn't buried. It's stacked neatly in basements and attics, labeled with masking tape. But labels can lie. You remember the year the original case began long before your phone learned your face, before the map in your dash told you every turn, back when the clock above the post office still kept time by its own stubborn rules. You pass that clock now. It's been stuck for as long as you can recall. The minute hand caught at 2 past the hour. Like the town was forever late to something important. A weird detail. There's a story that on the night everything changed, the clock hiccuped forward 1 minute and then froze, as if it had seen enough. People still pointed out to visitors, the way you'd show a scar and say, "It healed fine, but it still aches in the rain." The case starts with a quiet absence. You don't see sirens. And you don't hear screaming. You notice what isn't there. At the little library by the playground, the backlight is on. It always clicks off at 11, but tonight it holds on, a soft square of gold thrown onto the mulch. You walk closer and feel the prickle the way the brain warns the body with goose flesh. The librarian's keys are on the desk. The chair is turned slightly, like someone slid away to greet a knock and never came back. On the corkboard, a flyer for the winter craft fair, 2 lost cat notices, and a faded poster about CPR classes at the firehouse. The mundane company of the living. You breathe in the paper dust and a note of lemon cleaner. The stapler is still open. A single paper clip clings to the edge, shining dull and patient. You step around the circulation desk, and the old floor groans in that civil, church-like way old floors do. Down the hall, the staff door is propped with a folded wedge of cardboard. Improvised, careless, human. The river sings outside. You can't see violence in this place. That's part of the problem. Your eyes keep trying to make it ordinary. Police will arrive, of course. They will rope off the walkway and murmur. They will take statements from people you know by haircut more than by name. The chief will scratch his temple with the cap of his pen. He will ask you when you last saw her, the librarian whose voice could lower a classroom of 3rd graders like a dimmer switch. You'll say, "Yesterday." She smiled with her whole face. The chief will hum, as if that helps. It doesn't. Evidence techs will dust the doorframe, the back steps, and the trunk of the cottonwood where kids wait for rides. They'll swear they found something, and maybe they did, but it won't be enough. In small towns, evidence feels like gossip wearing gloves. You pause by the river where the railing is cold. Water carries away so many stories and returns only driftwood. In the weeks that follow, you will learn schedules you never wanted to memorize. Who jogs at dawn? Who walks the dog past midnight? And who smokes out back of the bowling alley when they say they've quit? You'll notice a pickup that parks half a block away from work and wonder why. You'll make mental maps of convenience stores with cameras. You'll check the library book drop like it might give back what it took. A historical truth hums under all this. In 1998, the National DNA Index, CODIS, went fully operational across the U.S., knitting together local and state databases into a single net that could sometimes catch what had slipped through. You don't know that yet in the timeline of your walk, but it will matter later in the kind of way quiet things matter. The way a fuse matters to a light you only notice when it flickers on. What you do know now is that back then your cops mailed envelopes and waited for sameness and difference to print out in black and white. The town waited with them. Waiting becomes your only hobby. A side murmur drifts in, an oddity people like to repeat. The vending machine behind the community center, a clanky relic that swallows quarters like a habit, kept humming a single note the night of her disappearance. Not a mechanical drone, but a pitch you could hum back. A B flat, someone said, the same note orchestras tune to. It kept that tone for hours, then stopped. The human brain. It hears patterns. It builds bridges where there are only puddles. Still, you remember it. You hear it now, by the river, a ghost of a note, and your shoulder blades pull tight. You turn toward the church lot, where dusk has tucked itself under the eaves. The sanctuary door stands open, the sconce light making a warm moat on the steps. You think of the man everyone trusts, the coach, the volunteer, the guy with sleeves rolled to the elbow at every fundraiser. In small towns, trust is neither earned nor tested. It is simply assumed, passed from neighbor to neighbor like a casserole dish. You push into the vestibule and smell candles and old hymnals. He's not there, of course, not yet. Tonight, he is just a face in your memory, a handshake, a laugh. You will not see the arrest coming. That's what makes communities flinch. The hand you've counted on clamping your shoulder in a friendly way is the same hand some detective squeezes cuffs around, months or years later. You thread through the pews, the varnish reflecting your passing like a pond. In places like this, people say everything happens for a reason, but the reasons are vague and very late. For now, theories rise like mist. A stranger passing through on the highway, a jealous ex, a prank turned sour, a wrong place, or a wrong time. Criminologists still debate whether small-town policing practices increase or decrease the clearance rate in stranger-on-stranger cases, you think. And the debate never quite settles, it hovers, academic and practical at once. Like a chalkboard problem half erased. You imagine chalk dust on your fingers. You imagine writing the right equation and solving your own town. Days turn to weeks. You walk the farmer's market, where tomatoes sit in neat rows like a parade. You hear the librarian's name in fragments, in the rustle of the newspaper aisle, at the end of every prayer list, and beneath the polite clap of the high school band. You start to notice signs. Have you seen? With photos that never look like the person you know, because no one ever chooses a truly candid shot. You hear how rumors sound when they put on nicer clothes and call themselves tips. You learn what a volunteer grid search feels like, the monotony, the drift of attention, the way hope becomes heavy to carry, but too precious to set down. One evening, you trail the river to the old footbridge, where teenagers carve their initials into the handrail and teach each other how to kiss. Someone has tied a ribbon there, the color of new sky. It flutters like a hand that wants to speak but doesn't know the word. You tie one too. You press the knot flat and imagine it is a kind of spell, a bargain with the wind. Give us back what we lost, and we'll remember to be better. Nothing answers. Somewhere a bicycle spokes its way through the alley. Years will unspool. The clock at the post office keeps pretending it's a new 2 minutes after. The vending machine behind the community center dies for good, and no one replaces it. A new librarian takes the job and keeps a plant on the desk that never really thrives, though she waters it every other day. You move through the seasons like a careful swimmer. The town grows a new strip mall and forgets the old one without meaning to. Sometimes, at night, You still feel the room lean in, like the universe holding its breath. And then a letter arrives, a plain envelope, like any other. You read it at your kitchen table with the fan on low, even though it's winter. The state lab has matched a partial profile from a swab preserved in the freezer from that first week, a swab everyone feared was contaminated, too old, or too compromised. It matches a sample from a man who was never on anyone's list. Not the drifter, not the ex, not the out-of-towner. A neighbor, a coach, a volunteer with sleeves rolled up. You read it twice because the words refuse to stay in the order you expect. You walk outside into the cold, and the world feels new, like a word you've only read but never said aloud. You try it in your mouth. Arrested. You listen for riot or relief, and instead find a careful, stunned silence. On the porch of the house next door, a wind chime plays 3 notes and quits. You remember the smell of the library and the way the door was propped, and the single paper clip, stubborn and silver. You think of CODIS humming all these years in the background, a quiet web pulling taut in a place you can't see. You think of the debate about memory and truth and policing, and how none of those conversations feel theoretical when the cruiser you wave at in parades pulls into a familiar driveway. He will be walked out in a coat you recognize, hair flatter than usual, and eyes like someone's turned the lights down inside. The chief will look like a man who broke his own tooth. Your town will split along lines no one can see. Old photographs will be turned over, and recital programs will be sifted through, and there will be 100 versions of what people always suspected. You will stand by your mailbox and taste static, that sharp tang, like the air before lightning. The handcuffs will click. The river will whisper past the cottonwoods. The clock will keep lying. Tonight, you're just a person on a quiet street, feeling the shape of the story in your chest. The arrest shocks your community, sure. But shock isn't the end. It's the start of the slow recalibration, the way a room learns to hold a new arrangement of furniture. You keep walking, deeper into the town you thought you'd mapped, deeper into a truth that was here all along, waiting like a note hummed by a vending machine in the dark. You wake before dawn, and the town is already awake in the way small towns wake quietly, through blinds and coffee makers, through the soft cough of trucks warming up along the curb. You lace your shoes because moving keeps your thoughts from running without you. When you step outside, the street has that blue hour glaze, everything washed to a single cool note. You breathe in, and the air tastes like pennies and frost. Somewhere a dog collar jingles. Somewhere a porch light clicks off. Overnight, the news traveled farther than you thought it could. Shock knows every shortcut. You walk the long way to the square, past the murals where high school seniors sign their names, past the bakery that sells cinnamon rolls the size of baseball mitts. The baker will speak in a low voice when you stop for coffee and ask for a lid. He'll say what everyone says, "I never would have guessed." He'll pass the cup like a handshake. You'll nod, because nodding is the town's default setting, the yes to things you can't make sense of yet. Out the window, you can see the courthouse steps, with the sun still shy. Those steps look like a question, leading nowhere. The cruiser is gone from the familiar driveway now. The house sits tucked behind its shrubs. Windows shut like eyes after a hard cry. You tell yourself not to look, and you look anyway. You remember his sleeves rolled to the elbow, the way he always had a pocket knife toe open boxes at the food drive, and the way he clapped at games, 2 beats late but loud. The mind is an archivist. It fetches what you ask for and what you don't. You keep walking, coffee warm against your palm, the lid tiny and useless as a shield. At the square, you find circles of people pretending to admire the landscaping. You step into one, and the temperature of the conversation drops a degree. The chief stands near the war memorial, his hat in his hands. He's careful with sentences. You can see he practiced them in the mirror at 3 a.m., smoothing the edges. He says they followed the evidence. He says a preserved swab. a partial profile, a hit in a database, and then a new warrant for a fresh sample, and then the match that closed the loop. You try to picture the loop. All you see is the library's back hallway, the wedge of cardboard under the door, and the desk plant that refuses to thrive. They will say the arrest happened calmly. No drama, no chase. The volunteer opened his door in a t-shirt and socks, surprised the way you're surprised when a branch scrapes glass in a storm, annoyed, uncomprehending, already reaching to fix something you can't fix. He will be read his rights in the tone people use when they pray over casseroles and hospital beds. The cuffs will look too bright in morning light. He will stoop slightly, the way a tall man stoops when he's lived too long in houses with low doorways. And yet the soft neigh of a neighbor's horse down the block, the smell of laundry, the way the screen door sighs when it swings shut, life will insist on ordinary. You drift from the square to the station, because you're not the only one who wants to witness what you can't control. From the sidewalk, you can't see much, just the reflection of clouds in the glass. You can hear the practiced murmur inside phones, the fax that still refuses to die, somebody's pen tapping in a thoughtless 4/4 time. A reporter in a fleece vest asks you for a quote, and you say, "You're just here." That's all anyone is, really. Here. The reporter writes the word "here" in her notebook, like it might mean something larger in print. You wonder if it will. A real fact floats to the surface, cool and hard. In 2013, the Supreme Court ruled in Maryland versus Plain King that, after an arrest for a serious offense, police may take a cheek swab of DNA as part of routine booking, like fingerprints, like photographs. You remember hearing about it on the radio once, the host using the phrase 21st century fingerprint. You didn't think it had anything to do with you. Most things don't until they do. That ruling is one of the quiet stepping stones that brought you to this sidewalk, to this morning, to the blur of your own reflection in a station window. Inside, they are asking him questions. You picture the interview room because you've seen enough TV to borrow its bones. In reality, it's just a table, a couple of chairs, and a video camera with a little red dot. One of the chairs wobbles because a felt pad is missing from a leg, and nobody has replaced it because that's how municipal buildings are. You imagine the volunteer's hands on the laminate, the tiny crescent of grime where thumbs rest. You imagine the investigator's voice softer than you'd expect, because the good ones know that the soft voice gets farther. The question is the same, asked 100 different ways. Why? You walk to the library instead. The police tape is gone, but the air still holds that hushed quality you associate with ceremonies. The new librarian nods at you. The plant on her desk, a pothos. Someone finally corrected her watering schedule, trailing 2 fresh vines, as if it decided to live after all. She has switched to a small, sturdy stapler that closes decisively. Someone replaced the bulb in the back hallway, so the light is whiter and less forgiving. You step to the corkboard and read the layer cake of notices. Yoga, blood drive, bingo night. The winter craft fair flyer has been replaced by a spring book sale. The picture of the missing woman is now part of a display. A quiet, careful corner with a candle and a bowl of smooth stones people can sign like a guest book. You run a finger over a stone with a name written in green ink. The stone is cool, and you keep the cool on your fingertip a second longer than you need to. Down by the river, a new odd detail has begun to collect itself into folklore. The night before the arrest, the church bell rang 7 times. Unplanned. At 2:07 a.m. No service, no funeral, no hand on the rope. Some say a raccoon wandered into the belfry. Some say the rope swayed in a draft. You know how drafts work. You felt them slip under doors like the letter you read at your kitchen table. Still, people will tell it that way. 7 rings for 7 years, or 7 rings for 7 missing answers. Your throat tightens at how quickly humans marry numbers to meaning. It's a tenderness, you decide, even when it's untrue. It's how we keep from feeling alone in the wind. By afternoon, the courthouse smells like dry paper and the inside of an old wallet. You walk into the hearing, and sit on a bench that seems to have been designed by someone who secretly hates sitting. The volunteer is led in wearing county orange that does not belong to him and yet does, perfectly, the way uniforms always manage. He looks smaller without the context of his life, the truck, the whistle lanyard, the calendar with fundraisers scribbled in pen. The judge's voice is neutral, a candle wick that never quite catches flame. Words like arraignment and bond and counsel stack up like boxes in a hallway. You know that inside each box is something sharp. The court appoints an attorney with kind eyes and a tie that looks like a hand-me-down. He says his client will plead not guilty. Of course he will. The town shifts on the benches as if everyone sits on the same piece of furniture. You swallow, and your tongue tastes like old pennies again. You think of the vending machine humming B-flat once upon a night and wonder if the courthouse HVAC is humming in E? You have no idea. You want to laugh because the brain is a strange roommate. It brings up the oddest topics in moments like these. When you step out into the afternoon, the sun is too bright, and the world is unkindly normal. The grocery store parking lot hosts its usual ballet of carts and bumpers. The school bus exhales its sigh at the top of the hill, and the mailboxes open their mouths in a row and swallow the future, one envelope at a time. You walk to the edge of the ball field, where chalk dust hangs in the air like low fog, and think about kids who will have to redraw their memories like maps with new borders. You hope someone tells them the truth gently, without that edge adults sometimes use when they are frightened and pretend they aren't. At home, you sit at the table with the fan low again, even though it's cold, because you've decided this sound is your metronome, your measure for processing. You spread papers like a tarot, reading news clippings, your notes, and the thank you card the library sent you after you volunteered for the book sale. You sketch timelines, because lines feel like control. You mark the night of the vending machine's single-note hum with a small musical symbol, a private joke you resent needing. Then you draw a new line from the freezer where the swab slept all these years, to the cheek swab taken at booking, to the lab where machines purr like content cats in fluorescent rooms. The line passes through so many hands. You whisper, "Thank you," to each pair, even the clumsy ones. By evening, your phone buzzes with links and opinions and apologies. Someone writes a long post about how guilt is a legal state, not a gossip one, and they're right in the way people are right without being useful. A cousin texts you a grainy screenshot of the volunteer at a parade, his hand raised at half-mast. You don't respond because every word feels like gravel in your mouth. You go for another walk instead. Motion. Again. You choose the route that takes you past the post office clock that lies so politely. In its glass, you see your face, then the sky drift, then the faint outline of the town you've carried, like a wallet photo in your pocket for years. You cut toward the community center out of habit. The vending machine is gone, a rectangular ghost on the wall where its outline remains in dust. You run a hand along that paler rectangle and come away with a fingertip clean, as if absence can polish things. It strikes you that maybe this is how justice will feel, an outline brightened by removal. Or maybe that's too poetic. You've learned to be suspicious of metaphor when the facts are still settling like flour in a jar. Still, your heart lifts a little at the sight, an empty square where a humming used to be. Night arrives with practiced grace. Your neighbor's windows go gold, then gray. Cricket season is months away, but you hear something in the hedges that could be an owl practicing its scales. Across town, the interview room sits in its own small black square. The man you used to know sits in a chair that still wobbles. Maybe he talks, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he remembers something small, the exact weight of the library key in his palm, the smell of lemon cleaner, the way a paperclip glinted like a patient star, and the remembering knocked something loose he'd wedged deep. Or maybe he builds a wall out of words and mortar made from stubbornness. You can't know, and the not knowing is a kind of draft that slips under every door in your house. You pour hot water into a mug and watch steam write invisible cursive in the air. You think of an argument that spans classrooms and conferences and corners of the internet. Whether forensic genetic genealogy, those family tree searches that led to high-profile arrests in the late 2010 seconds, trades too much of personal privacy for public safety, Scholars and ethicists keep talking, and the conversation refuses to close neatly, like a book that always falls open to the same page. You don't know where you land. Tonight, you hold both truths loosely: the longing to solve what hurts, and the desire not to be mapped without consent. You tell yourself you can carry contradictions for a while. Humans are built for that. We are closets with more than one shelf. Before bed, you stand at the back door and listen to the river as if it can be trusted again. Water moves toward its ending with patience. It's the opposite of breaking news. You recall another fact, almost tender in its utility. A single cotton fiber, a smudge of soil, or a sliver of adhesive can hold out longer than lies. Evidence is stubborn that way. You think of the tech who labeled the swab years ago, the neatness of their pen. You think of the person who opened the freezer last week and gasped when the machine's hum sounded slightly off, panic over a failing motor that would have turned a case into a memory if it had quit at the wrong hour. You resolve to bake something for that person. Justice, it turns out, is fed by ordinary kindness more than by speeches. You're lying there with the fan steady when your phone buzzes one more time. It's a text from an old friend who moved away, the kind who still says y'all even over 2 time zones. The message is simple: I'm sorry. Tell me what you need. You stare at those words until they blur into the room. You decide what you need is to keep walking through this story until the ground levels, to keep speaking gently in case someone else is listening in the dark. You decide what you need is the space to be both grateful and angry, both relieved and afraid. You decide what you need is a night's sleep that doesn't act like a mirror, showing you every strange angle of the day. Before you turn out the light, you think of the librarian's chair tilted slightly, the cardboard wedge under the door, and the stubborn paperclip. Small things. All of them. Ordinary, really. But you know better now. You know the ordinary is where the truth hides, quiet as a plant deciding to finally trail its leaves, quiet as a bell ringing when no hand is on the rope, quiet as a swab humming softly in a freezer behind a locked door, dreaming of the day it will be asked what it knows, and finally answering. Morning arrives with the gentlest defiance, spilling light over the town as if nothing has changed. The mist curls off the river, softening the edges of houses. And for a moment, you could almost believe you dreamt the whole thing. But then you hear the low thrum of a news van idling by the diner and the chatter of reporters rehearsing intros under their breath, and it all folds back into reality. The air feels different now, like a story that has been cracked open and can't be closed again. You pull your jacket tighter, hands buried deep, and walk toward the courthouse, where the day promises answers that never quite arrive. Inside, the trial begins, or what passes for the beginning. Motions, objections, and the quiet shuffling of papers that smell faintly of toner and stress. The volunteer sits at the defense table, his posture smaller, reduced somehow. You catch a glimpse of his eyes. They don't look back, just down, as if gravity found a new favorite target. You wonder what he's thinking. Does he rehearse excuses? Memories? Regrets? Does he remember that night as a blur? Or in cruel, exact detail, the shape of the door frame, the hum of the vending machine, the minute hand stuck at 2 past? You'll never know. That's the curse of being the observer. Your imagination does all the heavy lifting. The prosecutor's voice is steady and rehearsed. He traces the timeline with the precision of someone arranging bones. He talks about the evidence, the fibers, the fingerprints, the DNA, match each piece lifted like a relic from a reliquary. He calls experts to explain how time preserves things we wish it wouldn't. You sit there, hands folded, pulse ticking like a clock that can't forget. Around you, neighbors whisper, trading fragments of disbelief like currency. One woman dabs her eyes, even though she never really knew the librarian. Grief in a small town is communal. It spills into hands that never touch the source. A real historical truth rises from the prosecutor's monologue, almost buried in jargon. By 2020, the national backlog of untested rape kits in the USA had stretched into the hundreds of thousands. Delays, lost samples, budget excuses, all of it stacked like driftwood against justice. And yet, here, in this one case, a preserved swab outlasted bureaucracy and apathy both. You can almost feel the weight of it in the air, the quiet insistence of evidence that refuses to rot. It's hard not to feel reverence. It's harder still not to feel rage. The defense argues contamination, coincidence, and procedural error. They paint their client as a good man framed by faulty machines and hungry headlines. The jurors listen, still faced, but you can see the fatigue gathering like storm clouds behind their eyes. The world has taught them to doubt everything: photographs, signatures, even memory itself. Truth feels like a moving target. The defense attorney adjusts his tie and says, "DNA doesn't tell a story. People do." The line lands like a stone thrown into a pond. Perfect ripples, no depth. You feel your jaw tighten. Outside the courthouse, the town divides itself like a cell. Some people bring flowers to the library. Others bring questions to Facebook. The debate threads into every porch conversation, every grocery line. Was he always like that? Could we have known? You hear phrases like, "seemed nice enough," and "I trusted him with my kids." And you realize trust here was always more reflex than choice. You find yourself defending her memory in ways that surprise you, as if her absence has given you a voice you didn't know you had. As weeks stretch, testimony blurs. The evidence texts talk about chain of custody, refrigeration logs, and matching markers, technical poetry that no one applauds. You start to memorize their rhythms, STR profiles, loci, and contamination controls. You realize that truth now lives in spreadsheets, not stories. Still, there's a beauty in that precision, a strange tenderness in the way science guards what the heart can't. You think of the people in white coats who spent nights alone with slides and samples, listening to machines hum like lullabies for the lost. Then one afternoon, a witness surprises everyone, an older woman who once worked at the church. Her hands shake when she raises them to swear in. She remembers seeing him near the river that night, walking fast, his jacket soaked, his face unreadable. She didn't think much of it then, just a neighbor out late. But memory has its own weather. It waits for storms to clear before showing its sky. The courtroom exhales. The defense objects. The judge overrules. And the story lurches forward like a train finding old tracks. You close your eyes, just for a second, and see it. The dark street, the glint of water, and the hum of B-flat, still hanging over the town like a heartbeat that refuses to fade. Outside, the season turns. Leaves curl at their edges. The river slows. The vending machine's absence is now a mural painted by local kids of books, candles, and stars. The title reads, "What We Keep." You stop there sometimes after the trial, letting the dusk wash the color into shadow. You realize healing looks nothing like forgetting. It looks like learning to walk beside the ghosts without asking them to leave. You think maybe that's all anyone can do. Coexist with the unanswered. A strange academic debate starts circulating online. Some criminologists claim small towns exhibit memory inertia, that shared trauma hardens into folklore rather than fading. Others argue the opposite, that rural places heal faster because their histories are shorter and easier to overwrite. You stand somewhere in between. Memory, you think, isn't a wall or a river. It's a fog. Some mornings it lifts, and you see every detail clear as glass. Other mornings, it hides the town completely, and for a moment, you breathe easier in the blur. The verdict comes quietly. Guilty. You hear the word but don't celebrate. Justice is too slow, too costly, and too full of ghosts to feel like triumph. You walk home under the same streetlights that once felt safe, then strange, and now are just there. The air, Smells like rain again. You pass the post office clock. It's been fixed. It finally ticks forward, smooth and silent, as if time forgave you for doubting it. You look up at the minute hand and feel something almost like peace. Or maybe it's just exhaustion with better lighting. Later that night, you find yourself by the river once more. The water glows faintly under the moon. You think about everything that has changed and everything that hasn't. The librarian's chair, the plant, the soft hum that started it all. They've become symbols, like constellations you navigate by. You reach into your pocket and find a small object you've carried since the beginning. A paperclip, flattened and dull. You drop it into the water, and it vanishes without a sound. Some stories end quietly. Others just keep walking beside you. In the stillness, you whisper thanks to the evidence, to the people who didn't give up, and to the truth for finding its way through the cracks. You know the community will carry this scar forever, hidden beneath festivals and fundraisers and small talk. But scars, too, are proof of healing. They mean we lived through it, even when we shouldn't have had to. You turn toward home, the streets soft underfoot, the fan already humming in your imagination. Tomorrow, the world will go back to work. Kids will line up for the bus, the baker will open the shop, and the librarian will water the pothos. Life insists on continuing. That's its own kind of mercy. And as you lock your door, you say it one last time, under your breath, half prayer, half promise. Maybe someday we'll know the truth. But for now, sleep well. The night quiets again, gentler this time. You lean back in your chair, eyes half-lidded, the fan tracing circles through the soft air. The hum feels like safety now, like an echo of all the nights before you knew how fragile peace could be. Outside, the wind brushes the window with a fingertip touch, and the world exhales. The river keeps its rhythm, a long lullaby, repeating just for you. You breathe with it, slow, patient, letting your shoulders fall from their knots. The scent of paper and rain drifts faintly through memory, but even those edges start to soften, blurring like watercolor left in the sun. The story, heavy and restless, begins to loosen its grip. It turns translucent at the corners, like fog rolling back toward the hills. You remind yourself that endings don't need to be sharp to be real. Some arrive gently, like this one, hidden inside the quiet. You picture the town sleeping lights dimmed, streets empty, the post office clock ticking on without witness. The library lamp glows for a moment, then fades. The river folds the paperclip into its current, carrying it somewhere kind. Let your breath fall into sync with that movement. In and out, in and out. Each breath slower than the last. The story drifts, its sound dissolving into something softer, almost like music. You let go of what's left, the questions, the faces, even the hum, and sink into the stillness between sounds. It's late now. The night has forgiven everything. You can too. Sleep comes like a tide returning to shore, quiet and certain. You let it take you.